Welcome to Leadership Perspectives Nantucket. This is Doc Forsyth. Today I'm joined by Toby Cosgrove, Dr. Toby Cosgrove, CEO and President of Cleveland Clinic. I just have to share with our audience all the things that you're involved with, so bear with me and don't get embarrassed. So your system is an $8 billion healthcare system, which includes your main campus in Cleveland, 10 community hospitals, 18 family health centers. You've got the Cleveland Clinic in Florida, the Lou Rovo Center for Brain Health in Las Vegas, Cleveland Clinic in Toronto, Cleveland Clinic in Abu Dhabi, and you're building a new one in London that's going to open in a couple of years. Having said all that, you remain number 2 of one of America's top 5 hospitals, right?
Yes.
According to U.S. News and World Report. And last year you were 2016 Fortune Business Person of the Year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you're only one of 2 hospitals named among America's 99 most ethical companies. Quite an achievement.
It's a great organization.
And preceding that, you were a surgeon in the U.S. Air Force serving in Da Nang, Vietnam, as the chief of the U.S. Air Force Casualty Staging Flight. And for that, you got the Bronze Star and a Commendation Medal from the Republic of Vietnam. So thank you for serving your country.
Yes, thank you.
So that's quite a dossier, Doctor. How do you do it? And who do you kind of rely on to help you?
Well, I've got a great team, and it's been a great journey and a great privilege to lead the Cleveland Clinic.
So tell us about some of the new parts. So you've got Building London, and you did Abu Dhabi, and these are from the ground up design and build.
Right. Well, we first started with Abu Dhabi about 12 years ago, and the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Abu Dhabi asked us to come and bring our culture and our facility there. And so it has been a long ways from actually signing the contract to picking the site, picking the architect, planning the building, and now inhabiting and bringing it up to speed. It's going to be about currently a 360-bed hospital, and we're expanding it to 500 as we speak. And we have now 5,000 caregivers there and 300 physicians, of which 80% are from the United States and 20% from Europe. First-class group of our individuals.
That's amazing.
Growing at about 7% a month.
Yep. Excellent. So managing all that, building new hospitals all over the globe, how do you manage time or how do you get to Nantucket and why do you come to Nantucket? What's your Nantucket story?
Well, I came to Nantucket first in 1962 when I sailed in here on a boat called Nefertiti on America's Cup. I crewed on that boat in the America's Cup series.
1962.
1962.
Yeah. Wow.
And then after Anita and I were married, we decided we needed a little bit of Nantucket in our lives, and we started coming here at Thanksgiving every year. And subsequently, we bought a house here on Brant Point with another couple, and then it was the perfect storm, as you may remember, came in and flooded our underneath our house. And ultimately, after a couple of years, we bought another house up on the cliff. And have been coming here ever since. It's a very special place.
That's great. Well, I'm sure you want to get here more and more, but with your schedule, it must be tough.
Yeah, it's tough to get here from Cleveland, and it's also tough time-wise.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about your culture at the Cleveland Clinic, because obviously it's unique. You know.
It's a very unique organization. In fact, it was founded in 1921 by 3 doctors who had fought together in World War I, and they realized that they could do better working together than they could individually. So that they came together and they decided that it would be doctor-led. It would be, everybody would be salaried. We'd all have 1-year contracts. We'd have annual professional reviews, and it is a group practice. So really what happens is that we are a group of physicians who make our rules, we elect our leadership, and we run our hospitals. It's not a hospital that employs physicians. Really quite different.
It is. And in that type of culture, what's the feedback mechanism like? How do you as a CEO get feedback, and how do the people underneath you get feedback?
Well, the annual review is done by your peers,
Okay.
and so there are elected board of governors of the Cleveland Clinic, and ultimately, all the feedback from the department chairs comes back to them, and we're all reappointed, and I'm reappointed on an annual basis by the board of directors, which is the lay board, and so I get every year I come up for recontracting. It doesn't have any tenure. And so that's one of the things that drives quality of the organization.
So what's the leadership development, philosophy in that type of culture? Because that's also quite unique. That every year you're back up.
Right. So we were going very hard at, particularly recently, about leadership development. We've done it both internally, and we've partnered with a lot of organizations to send people off for executive MBAs, et cetera. And so because we are physician-led, it's really quite different about taking a physician and teaching them about business. It may be easier to teach a physician about business than it is to teach a businessman about medicine.
I would say so.
but anyhow, so we do that, and then I have underneath me chief of finance, marketing, but government relations, all of those corporate entities that help us run the organization.
So when you shifted from being a surgeon, a doctor, into that business role, would you say that was one of those transformative experiences in your life?
Oh my goodness. It was kind of funny because I'd done about 22,000 operations, and I hadn't been, all my life had been in the operating room, and all of a sudden I'm in the boardroom. And instead of reading the New England Journal of Medicine, I'm reading the Harvard Business Review. And instead of talking to surgeons on patients, I'm talking to trustees. And all of a sudden I became a public figure. And it was an enormous, very difficult change for me. So I have worked very hard that the next person will be a little bit more familiar and have a little bit more experience with those sorts of things than I had.
How did you manage that transformation? I mean, sounds like from an introverted environment to an extremely extroverted environment.
Yeah, no question about it. Well, I frankly, I used to go home every day and study until my head went down on the desk for about a year and a half or 2 years. And it was amazing how long it took me to figure out, those parentheses on P&Ls? Those aren't good, and it took me a long time to figure that one out.
They don't teach that in MBAs anymore.
Yeah.
That's funny. What about some other key events in your life?
Well, I think one of the things that was sort of one of the cauldrons that I went through was, turns out I'm dyslexic. And when I went to Williams College, I struggled academically, particularly around French. I didn't know that I was dyslexic until I was 34.
No kidding.
And so getting through French taught me a lot of humility. 3 D minuses and a D of 4 semesters of remedial French, meeting 5 days a week at 8 o'clock in the morning, was enough to make anybody sort of humble about their intellectual capabilities.
Sure.
And it turns out that over time, the dyslexia, if you can get through all the tough academic stuff, which is really hard for dyslexics, if you get through that, I think dyslexia is a major advantage because you look at the world differently. And I found out subsequently that I really, when faced with a problem, I generally come up with different types of solutions than other people do. And it took me a long time to understand that, but it helps with the creativity, it helps with the original thinking, and it helps in a different viewpoint.
And you weren't diagnosed with that until you were 34.
I never heard the word until I was 34.
That's amazing. I mean, that had to be a transformative moment for sure.
Well,
you're like, wow, that makes sense now. It's all much clearer to me.
Right. I just thought I was dumb. I'm still not sure about that, but it at least made things make a little more sense.
How about any other key events in your life that helped shape you as a leader or as a person?
Well, I think the opportunity at age 28 to run a 100-bed facility in Da Nang was the first real opportunity for leadership. We wound up moving 22,000 sick and wounded through that facility during the time I ran it, and there was just 2 docs and 11 nurses and a huge group of corpsmen, and we looked after an awful lot of people. That was a great experience and first taste of real leadership.
Yeah, well, especially in that environment and seeing that type of volume, and I'm sure the injuries were horrible.
Injuries were tough.
So only 2 doctors.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So obviously a very hands-on leadership experience.
Yeah, it was. It was a great experience, and for me, and it taught me a lot about people. It taught me about the world. It taught me about war. It really was a very transformative experience.
So when you got out of Vietnam, and again, thank you for your service, was that when you started at the Cleveland Clinic, or what was your next step?
No, I was taken out of my middle of my residency to go in the service during the war, and so I had to finish it my training when I came back, and so I finished my training at Mass General and Boston Children's Hospital. Then I was unemployed. That was another humbling experience. And
hard to imagine a doctor being unemployed.
Well, it was a little embarrassing to think about going down to the unemployment service as a cardiac surgeon and applying for unemployment insurance. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
But so during that time, I wrote a book, and then I got an opportunity to go to the Cleveland Clinic, and I have been there ever since, 43 years.
What was the book that you wrote then?
I wrote a book about cardiac surgery in children.
Oh, nice. Good. Still published?
No, it's a little dated now.
Well, maybe when you're retiring, you can refresh it.
No, I'm out of the healthcare business.
All right. What about shifting to some key people in your life over the years? You've obviously have an amazing set of experiences. Are there some people that stand out that really helped shape you as a leader?
Well, I think, I always look at learning from people different things. You learn as looking at leadership, you learn about people who do things that you absolutely hate and learn not to do them yourselves. Mm-hmm. And you learn about how you want to pick up the good traits of other people. So I'm a mishmash of a lot of people that I've admired or thought could do better.
Oh, great. Well, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. This is Leadership Perspectives Nantucket, and today we're joined by Dr. Toby Cosgrove, and CEO of Cleveland Clinic, and we'll be right back.
Our goal was we wanted to work with people that we loved. We wanted to make a difference. We wanted to see if we could walk our talk, live what we said, and we wanted to have fun.
My father, who was fundamentally a philosopher more than anything, and the philosophy that he's been talking about for many, many years, is that if you create a clear vision and if you take care of your people, phenomenal things happen.
We talk about the words leading at a higher level. I think that's really the essence of what we are about. We want others to also lead at the highest level possible.
People want to be the kind of companies that Ken Blanchard writes about. So our job is take that information, put it into practical learnings, and work with companies to make companies more valuable from a personnel and intrinsic perspective.
Welcome back to Leadership Perspectives Nantucket. Today we're joined by Dr. Toby Cosgrove, CEO and President of the Cleveland Clinic. So let's continue this chat about key people in your life over the years. Does anyone else come to mind that helped shape you as who you are or as a leader?
Well, I don't think anybody is not shaped by their family, and certainly my parents were a great source of inspiration, and certainly my wife Anita is the smart one in the family and who is constantly asking questions, sometimes difficult questions, sometimes probing questions, but always keeping me going and on my toes.
Well, and she's into some interesting things herself. I know she works at the Human Longevity Institute, and I was thinking, like, who would not want to work there? Or who wouldn't want to be a patient there? Yeah. What do they do?
Well, she is involved with Craig Venter, who you know is the person who first sequenced the human genome. And they are trying to figure out how they piece together imaging and the human genome and help people understand their potential and their for a long life.
I understand Dr. Ventnor's a Nantucket resident here as well.
He is interesting.
Yeah.
It goes back to we both served in Vietnam and Da Nang at the same time.
No kidding. The same hospital? Or
No,
same
we were in
field
different
hospital?
hospitals. He served at the Naval Hospital, and I was in the Air Force Hospital, and the Naval Hospital used to send us a lot of patients.
Okay. A little overflow. That's amazing. I didn't know that. That's good. And he's in La Jolla, and that's where your wife is?
Yes.
So she's a telecommuter, or?
She is a physical commuter back and forth.
Okay. So you really must cherish your time together here on Nantucket.
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. What about any other key experiences or events that really shaped you?
Well, I have looked at my experience at Mass General as one of the really key experiences that I went through, and I always stop to think about what it was about that of being on every other night and every other weekend for 5 years, and was it the great teachers, the great professors, and what I look back on and realize it was really about raising the level of expectations. And you never could meet their expectations, and they raised my level of expectation for myself greater than anything else. And I think that basically that's what education is all about, is raising a person's level of expectation. And ultimately you have to do it yourself, but if you have expectations for yourself, you drive yourself to do it. And they elevated my expectations for myself. So I'm hugely grateful for that.
Raise your personal bar.
They did, no question about it.
Mm-hmm. That must have been quite an experience. Those are wonderful hospitals.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. They are wonderful hospitals and a very dedicated group of individuals. And there wasn't always so wonderful when you had the weekend off. You started Thursday morning and you finished up at noon on Saturday to have your weekend off that went half a Saturday and all of Sunday, and then you came back to work. And
did it all over again.
Did it all over again. 120 hours a week was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And a lot of expectation, but a great experience. And
so those hospitals have quite a brand. You must have learned a lot from that experience and took that with you to Cleveland Clinic to kind of create even I could say a better brand. I mean, you've got the accolades. Is that true?
Yeah, no, I steal shamelessly from anybody that I can. I try and find the best. And in fact, one of the things that I used to do is I would travel all over the world when I would find out that there was something new going on someplace, and take my little notebook and go and take notes and try to incorporate them back into our practice. And it changed the practice of the Cleveland Clinic in some ways, and it changed the practice of cardiac surgery in the United States and a lot of the things that I found various places in the world. So it was really about trying to steal shamelessly from great ideas wherever I could find them.
Sure. Well, I understand you're quite an innovator yourself. You have 30 patents. Is that got some ideas and then said we can actually make this part of the procedure or a new device?
Yeah, no, it went all the way from surgical instruments to heart valves.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful intellectual journey to be part of trying to develop something that actually wound up going in people.
Yeah.
I have to tell you a fun one about one of the stories. The atrial appendage on the heart is where blood clot forms, and we thought if we could get rid of that atrial appendage by in surgery just sewing it off, we could reduce the number of strokes. So we tried and tried and tried sewing it off, stapling it off. None of it worked. So one day I asked my daughters, tell me all that stuff that goes in your hair, the things that do this and the things that do that. And so out of that, we developed a clip that goes on the left atrial appendage and eliminates that. And it's now been put in 10,000 people.
Like a hair clip.
Like a hair clip.
That's amazing. You are creative.
No, they were the inspiration.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So what's more difficult, designing and building a medical device or designing and building a hospital?
Oh, clearly designing, and they're both equally challenging, different kinds of challenges.
I bet. So if you look at your key events, key experiences, and the key people in your life, how's that boil down to kind of your own personal values?
Well, I am a big believer in teams. And I think that is ultimately, particularly in healthcare, putting together the right team and making the team work seamlessly as a team is incredibly important. Teams always have to have some sort of leadership. And I frankly didn't recognize the importance of leadership until maybe 10 years ago, and I've subsequently seen that the leader casts an enormous shadow and has an enormous influence. And you see it whether it's on the ward or whether it's a head of a department or head of a hospital. A good leader makes all the difference. A bad leader is equally a big problem. And you can change leadership, and within weeks, the whole organization changes. But it's the leader's job to really organize it around a team, make people feel as a team, and I know in healthcare right now it's become, instead of an individual sport, it's become a team sport.
Yeah.
Because it's way too complicated for any one individual to manage it. And so the importance of team play becomes very, very obvious.
Yeah. So one of your values is obviously teamwork. What else comes to mind?
Well, I believe in teams. I believe in leadership. I believe in transparency. And in an organization, you have to be very, very transparent. One of the things that we've done is we publish every year the outcomes of our facilities, and we make it public. And we do it for two reasons, actually. By bringing all the results together and looking at them, we always find something we can do better at. And the second thing is that we're a community resource, and it's an obligation for us to be transparent about our results to the community. And so that transparency is vitally important.
So the open book management, open book philosophy, something you embrace.
Absolutely.
That's good. So you just announced your retirement. And you have a successor in mind, or does Cleveland Clinic really embrace a strong internal succession strategy?
Yeah, no, we've worked at internal succession. In fact, that's one of the things I worked at for a decade. We're now down to the final phases of selecting who my successor is going to be. I think one of the things that really pleases me is we've got several people who are very talented and make great replacements. They're all going to be better than I was. So we should have that in the next few weeks, and then I will shift over the responsibility of them after I've introduced them to the community, and I'll be out of there at the end of the year.
So what's next?
That's a good question. I don't know. I've had interesting approaches from places that I never thought I would be approached by. I didn't really think about a year ago. I didn't think anybody was going to want a used cardiac surgeon, but it turns out that there's going to be some other options. I'm not going to spend my life playing golf. I've never played a round of golf so far, and I don't see it in my future. So I will do something else, and I haven't figured that out yet.
Well, my boss, Ken Blanchard, says it's time to refire, not retire. So that sounds like what you have planned.
Yeah. I'll find something that'll keep my mind occupied.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you heard, but there's this great new hospital being built out here, and they're always looking for talent.
Good. They wouldn't want me looking after patients anymore.
Well, it's a wonderful story, and I'm glad they're creating that facility. So maybe you can at least advise and consult.
Be happy to help.
Well, you also published a couple years ago the Cleveland Clinic Way. Any plans to publish or write something new?
Well, you have to understand, for a dyslexic to write anything is incredibly difficult.
I bet. Yeah.
So I think I've done my writing. I put about 450 papers and a couple books, and I don't see writing in my future. I've had enough of that.
It's a big production, that many.
It's hard.
Yeah, that is. So perhaps speaking.
I can do that easier.
Well, you have a lot to share, and there's a lot of experiences that people can learn from that you've had. So thank you for sharing them with us today on the show.
It's been my privilege.
And enjoy the rest of your weekend on Nantucket. Well deserved.
I can't imagine how I could not enjoy it.
Okay, great. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.